Good morning, metalheads of the internet, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Metal Meltdown. Today we are talking about the latest studio album from Man Must Die entitled The Pain Behind It All. This is the fifth studio album and the first released in just under a decade from Scottish technical death metal crew Man Must Die. To their credit, they did drop an EP in 2019, but aside from that, it's been a whole lot of quiet for the past decade, and for the life of me, I've honestly no clue as to why. Honestly, in retrospect, it's just downright puzzling, confusing, odd that Man Must Die would have disappeared at all, following the momentum built up by records like The Human Condition, No Tolerance for Imperfection, and Peace Was Never an Option. That last album I think I remember talking about on a Tumblr blog back in the day. God damn how times have changed. Ah, well, fuck it. I may never know. No point obsessing and worrying. The point is, the good news is, Man Must Die finally have given us a brand new studio album made by an almost entirely brand new lineup. Angus McFarland and Joe McGlynn on guitars and vocals respectively do remain, and they are promising, at least in this little excerpt, courtesy of Luther's PR, that Man Must Die are coming back with their angriest offering yet, with the most solid lineup they have ever had. Man Must Die will once again bring the fight, but in a bigger way than ever. And right off the bat, I'm inclined to agree. The Pain Behind It All is an explosive and immediate record that wastes absolutely no time in beating you down with tight, tough, muscular, groovy, tech-deaf riffery. No guest stars, no big collaborations, there's no massive, heartfelt, politically charged concept to speak of. It's just Man Must Die pummeling the fuck out of everyone and everything in sight. I assume while shouting at the top of their lungs that Man Must Die. I mean, the absolute ferocity of this thing combined with, those big, groovy, technical swings and punches, it brings to mind a kind of, darkness and brutality I used to expect from Gojira on early records like Terra Incognita. At times, I'm also reminded of a mesh of influences and vibes from very early Decapitated and mid-2000s Behemoth. The harder that Man Must Die leans in on those big groovy riffs and chugs, I even find myself being reminded of Machine Head or Lamb of God. Bring Me the Head of the King, for instance, is a violent, blistering, uncompromising number filled with hyper-technical and demanding guitar work and percussion. At the same time, though, it does have some prominent, meaty, thrashy, sickly grooves and some melodic licks and harmonies that, again, would not be out of place on a heavier recording from the aforementioned Machine Head or Lamb of God. It's all very well balanced, though. I love that breakdown near the very end, though. It just goes straight for the jugular with some really heavy, beefy, bassy riffs and some really sick kind of off-putting vocal effects. You also have the title track, The Pain Behind It All, which is a much slower, darker, moodier, anguished kind of groove-laden tech death. I mean, it's still fierce, but we're definitely dipping our toes into those aforementioned early Gojira vibes with this one. Guitar-wise, this is probably one of the main highlights on the record for me. I like how they combine some more intentionally awkward, disorienting, and weird kind of licks and harmonies and soundscapes with some more typical groove metal, death metal riffery. It makes this thing feel really fierce and angry and important, but, while also establishing a very uneasy kind of atmosphere and emotion. I really like the double whammy of OCD and Patterns in the Chaos as well. It does a really good job at tapping into the kind of frustration and annoyance that people with OCD do have and regularly experience in dealing with certain behaviors and patterns. I found that genuinely really cathartic and interesting. That's not something you see explored a lot within technical death metal. Interestingly, there are a few moments where Man Must Die are caught flirting quite shamelessly with thrash metal. Not so much in the vein of, say, Exodus or Slayer or Overkill, more so in the vein of a more modern technical thrash death kind of band, like Revocation. Tracks like In the Hour Before You're Deaf and War Is My Will are great examples. The latter track, might I add, also features some more epic kind of twin guitar wizardry that I would associate with like a mellow death band like maybe Amon Amarth. Unfortunately, in my opinion, Man Must Die fumble and stumble pretty hard right around the middle of this thing with tracks like Click Hate and Enabler, the former of which tries to combat hateful behavior and echo chambers on social media and the internet, the latter of which honestly is just a full-on Lamb of God ripoff. To be clear, I don't think these tracks are terrible per se. I'll give Enabler credit. I still enjoyed it far more than I did anything from that last Lamb of God album. But they definitely stand out amongst the really big and entertaining highs of this record, and not like a sore thumb, might I add. More like a diseased, broken thumb, like the bone is sticking out and everything. I'm feeling a 3.5 out of 5 on this. I think it's a very good record, warts and all. There's a lot of anger, there's a lot of urgency, and I really connect with that. It's by no means a mind-blowing, revolutionary record. Again, it stays pretty safely within the realms of what we know and expect from tech death. But, you know, its little flirtations with thrash and groove metal are solid, even when it leans a little too far in the groove on something like Enabler, even when it goes like full-blown Machine Head or Lamb of God. It's still decent. It still keeps things at least kind of fresh. I can definitely picture people also being disappointed by these more groove metal leaning moments and numbers, but I think for the most part people are going to be pretty happy with this. It's definitely, you know, just brutal and fierce and hyper technical enough to keep diehard fans and connoisseurs engaged. Definitely not a perfect record. I don't even think it's Man Must Die's best album, but I do think Man Must Die have mostly lived up to that promise of this being their angriest offering yet. And I think anyone looking for a bunch of super hella mean riffs and grooves and beatdowns will be extremely satisfied with this. Solid 3.5 out of 5. Check it out. It's pretty good. And that is it for the Metal Meltdown. I'm not an expert, nor do I claim to be. So what do you think? Do you like this record? Do you not like this record? And what do you want to hear from me next? Thank you for watching. Make sure you press subscribe right here so you get updates on the Metal Meltdown fucking immediately. And as always, you have yourself a fantastic fucking day.